Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun!
The rain wept silently against the antique panes, its muted melody echoing the emptiness within the Victorian mansion's walls. A haunting silence had embraced this house since the day her husband was laid to rest. A silence that lingered in every shadow-shrouded corner. The once joyful halls, once alive with his father's infectious laughter, now loomed over Orlando with an oppressive solitude. Piles of forms and documents had taken over the dining table, mirroring the disquiet that pervaded his being. Time had lost its meaning, blending days into a haze of grief and fiscal complications. Orlando's once immaculate attire, a dark blue button-down and khakis, now bore witness to countless hours spent sedentary, engulfed in paperwork. As he sifted through the sea of legal papers, his breath a mixture of frustration and fatigue, his fingers desperately sought the elusive property documents. The ancient clock struck 9, its sonorous chimes a stark contrast to the house's enveloping quietude. A weary Orlando rose, his body protesting against the inactivity of the long day's toil. He needed those papers. The deadline was approaching fast, and the last thing he wanted was trouble with the IRS on top of everything else. Then he remembered his father's habit of keeping important documents in the basement safe room. The old man had been a touch paranoid, installing the hidden room years ago during the Cold War era. Orlando had always found it amusing, until now, when it actually might prove useful. The basement stairs creaked under his weight. The light switch clicked, illuminating the dusty space with a dim yellow glow. Orlando made his way across the concrete floor to the far wall, pushing aside an old bookshelf that concealed the entrance to the safe room. The hidden door swung open with a metallic groan. What greeted Orlando inside was not at all what he'd expected. The small room was lined with elegant wooden wardrobes, their doors slightly ajar. A vanity table sat in one corner, its surface covered with makeup brushes, lipsticks, and perfume bottles. The walls were painted a soft lilac color, and a plush carpet covered the floor. What the hell? Orlando stepped inside, confusion mounting as he approached the nearest wardrobe and pulled the door fully open. Inside hung dresses. Not just any dresses. Designer pieces, evening gowns, cocktail dresses, summer frocks in silks, satins, and chiffons. His fingers brushed against the fabrics, the sequins on one blue dress, catching the light and throwing prisms across the wall. The next wardrobe contained blouses, skirts, and women's pants, all meticulously arranged by color. Another held lingerie, silk slips, lace-trimmed bras, and delicate panties. Shoes lined the bottom of each wardrobe, heels of varying heights, flats, boots, all in different colors, but all clearly expensive and well-maintained. Orlando stood frozen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The room was pristine, every item carefully preserved, suggesting this wasn't some storage space for his mother's things. She had passed away over 15 years ago, and besides, many of these pieces looked newer than that. His eye caught a wooden box on the vanity. Inside, he found a collection of wigs in various styles, all in the same rich brown shade as his own hair. Beneath them lay a sealed envelope addressed simply, "For when I'm gone." With trembling fingers, Orlando broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside.
My dear son, if you're reading this, I've left this world, and you've discovered my most closely guarded secret. This room contains not just tax documents and financial records, but the truest expression of myself,
one I was never brave enough to share with the world. From my earliest memories, I felt a disconnect between my body and my soul. The suits and ties that society expected me to wear always felt like a costume, while these dresses and skirts you see around you felt like coming home. Your mother knew and loved me completely, both parts of me. After her passing, this room became my sanctuary. I never told you because I feared losing your respect, your love. Perhaps that was my greatest mistake, underestimating you. But I hope in discovering this part of me, you might understand me better in death than perhaps you did in life. With all my love, Dad. Orlando sank onto the small cushioned stool before the vanity, the letter clutched in his hand. Tears blurred his vision as he looked around the room with new understanding. His father, the stern businessman, the little league coach, the man who taught him to change a tire and balance a checkbook, had lived with this secret his entire life. His eyes fell on the blue sequined cocktail dress that had caught his attention earlier. Something about it called to him, the way the fabric shimmered under the light, elegant, yet somehow joyful. Without fully understanding why, Orlando stood and took the dress from its hanger. He held it against himself, looking in the full-length mirror mounted on one of the wardrobe doors. The dress was approximately his size. His father had been built similarly to him, though perhaps a bit broader in the shoulders.
"This is crazy,"
he whispered, but he didn't put the dress back. Instead, with movements that felt both foreign and strangely familiar, Orlando began to undress. He slipped out of his button-up shirt and khaki pants, standing in just his boxers and socks. The blue dress waited, draped over the vanity chair. With a deep breath, Orlando stepped into the dress, pulling it up over his hips and sliding his arms through the sleeves. The zipper in the back proved challenging, but he managed to pull it up most of the way. The fabric hugged his waist in a surprisingly flattering manner. He turned to face the mirror again, and the sight stole his breath. The person staring back at him wasn't entirely Orlando anymore. The dress transformed his silhouette, creating curves where there were none, highlighting aspects of his frame he'd never noticed before. The blue sequins caught the light with every small movement, creating a mesmerizing effect against his skin. Something shifted inside him, a recognition, a feeling of rightness that took him completely by surprise. His hand went to his throat, then to his brown hair, tousling it slightly to soften his features.
"This should feel wrong,"
he whispered to his reflection.
"Why doesn't it feel wrong?"
Orlando turned slowly, watching how the dress moved with him. His father's letter seemed to pulse in his mind. The disconnect, the feeling of coming home. Was it possible that this same disconnection had been lurking inside him all along, unacknowledged? He remembered childhood moments with new clarity, his fascination with his mother's jewelry box, the Halloween when he'd wanted to be a princess, but settled for a knight instead, the inexplicable envy he sometimes felt watching women in beautiful dresses at formal events. Orlando slipped his feet into a pair of low heels he found beneath the wardrobe. They fit surprisingly well. He walked a few experimental steps, wobbling slightly before finding his balance.
"I need to see more,"
he murmured, turning back to the vanity. He selected one of the brown wigs, a shoulder-length style with soft waves. Placing it carefully on his head, he adjusted until it sat naturally, the color indeed a perfect match for his own hair. The transformation continued. A touch of foundation, a swipe of mascara, a dab of rouge on his cheeks, all applied with unpracticed but determined hands. When he finished and looked in the mirror again, Orlando gasped. The person looking back was both himself and someone entirely new, someone with softer features, with a hesitant smile forming on lips, now tinted a subtle pink.
Athena,
he whispered, the name coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. It felt right on his tongue, powerful yet feminine, a connection to something ancient and wise. Hours passed as Athena, explored the safe room's treasures. She tried on different outfits, practiced walking in heels, experimented with makeup. Each new discovery felt like peeling back another layer of a self she'd never known existed, but somehow had always been there. When the grandfather clock upstairs chimed 3 times, Athena realized she'd spent the entire night in the safe room. Reluctantly, she began to undress, carefully hanging the blue sequined dress back in its place. But as she reached for her discarded male clothes, something inside her resisted. Not yet, she told herself. Just a little longer. She selected a more casual outfit, a simple black skirt and a white blouse, and put them on instead. The tax documents, her original reason for coming down here, lay forgotten on a shelf. Days turned into weeks, and Athena spent more and more time in the safe room. By day, Orlando went to work, managed his father's estate, and maintained the appearance of normalcy. But evenings and weekends belonged to Athena. She taught herself to apply makeup properly through online tutorials. She practiced her voice, working to soften its deeper edges. She ordered breast forms and other items to complete her appearance, having them delivered to a private P.O. box. The more time she spent as Athena, the more Orlando felt like the costume. 3 months after discovering the safe room, Athena made her first tentative steps outside the house. It was just to the backyard at first, feeling the night air on her skin, the gentle sway of a summer dress around her knees. Then short drives at night, heart pounding with both fear and exhilaration. Her first real outing was to a bookstore 2 towns over, dressed in a conservative navy blue dress and sensible heels, her brown wig styled in a simple bob. No one gave her a second glance. She bought a cookbook and a novel, exchanged pleasantries with the cashier, and returned to her car with tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. "I did it, Dad," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel. "I went outside as the real me." The dual life continued for several more months. Orlando began to lose weight. The time spent as Athena meant less interest in eating during his time as Orlando. His colleagues noticed the change, commented on how he seemed distracted, asked if he was dating someone new. In a way, he supposed he was. He was falling in love with Athena, with the freedom and authenticity she represented. In the safe room, Athena discovered more treasures, journals her father had kept, documenting his own journey. She read about his struggles, his fears, the joy he found in his private moments of authenticity. She learned that her mother had loved both sides of him, had even helped him shop for clothes and select makeup. "She saw all of me and loved me anyway," her father had written.
"If only I had her courage to show the world who I truly am."
Those words haunted Athena. Was she making the same mistake, hiding her true self away in a secret room? The decision didn't come all at once, but as a slow realization over many months. Orlando's life felt increasingly hollow, a performance put on for others, while his real self waited at home in silk and lace. The breaking point came 9 months after discovering the safe room, when she realized she hadn't worn male clothes at home for weeks, changing into Athena's attire the moment she walked through the door. That evening, dressed in a vintage emerald green dress that had been one of her father's favorites, Athena sat at the dining room table and wrote out a plan. The transition wouldn't be easy. There would be legal hurdles, medical considerations, social challenges. But living this divided existence was becoming unbearable. 1 year, she promised herself. 1 year from the day I found the safe room, I'll be living as my authentic self. The first step was therapy, finding a professional who specialized in gender identity issues. The therapist, Dr. Ramona Wells, helped Athena navigate her feelings, confirm that this wasn't just grief or a phase, but a genuine expression of her identity. What you're describing is consistent with gender dysphoria, Dr. Wells explained during their third session. Many people don't recognize these feelings until later in life, especially if they grew up in environments where such feelings couldn't be safely explored. My father must have felt the same way, Athena said, smoothing the fabric of her coral dress over her knees. But he never took the step to live openly. Different times, different circumstances, Dr. Wells said gently. But you have the opportunity to make a different choice. The next step was harder, telling people. Athena started with her closest friend, Marcus, inviting him to the house one evening. She wore a simple black dress with a cardigan, her brown hair, now growing out into a softer style around her face, complemented by light, natural makeup. Marcus's confusion gave way to understanding as she explained, showing him the safe room, her father's letter, her own journey of self-discovery.
So, Athena, huh?
He said finally, testing the name. She nodded, hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling.
It suits you,
he said, and the simple acceptance in those words made her cry with relief. Not everyone was as understanding. Some colleagues drifted away. Her father's older brother stopped speaking to her entirely, but there were surprises too. Support from unexpected quarters, kindness from mere acquaintances who became true friends. The legal process was tedious. Name changes, gender marker updates on identification documents. Medical transitions began, with hormone therapy gradually softening her features, redistributing her body's fat, and beginning the process of developing breasts. Throughout it all, her father's clothes became her anchor. Each piece told a story, carried a history. Athena had them tailored to fit her changing body, preserving their essence while making them truly hers. The blue sequined dress, the first one she'd ever tried on, became her special occasion outfit, worn to mark significant milestones in her transition. Exactly 1 year after discovering the safe room, Athena stood in front of the full-length mirror in what was now her dressing room. The safe room had expanded, taking over the entire basement as she'd renovated the space into a proper walk-in closet and vanity area. She wore the blue sequined dress, now perfectly fitted to her feminized figure. Her brown hair had grown past her shoulders, styled in soft waves that framed her face. Subtle makeup enhanced her features, which had softened considerably from the hormone therapy. She barely resembled the person who had stumbled upon this room a year ago, searching for tax documents and finding an identity instead.
We did it, Dad,
she whispered, touching the delicate gold locket around her neck. Another treasure from the safe room, containing tiny photos of both her parents. I'm living as my true self. That evening, Athena hosted a small dinner party in her home, the first time she'd entertained as her authentic self. She prepared her father's favorite recipes, using the cookbook she'd bought on her first outing as Athena. Her guests included her therapist, Marcus and his wife, and a few new friends from her support group. As they raised their glasses in a toast, Athena felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But she had found her path, honoring her father's memory not by hiding as he had done, but by living openly and authentically in the elegant, vintage dresses and classic pumps that once belonged to him. "To new beginnings," she said, the blue sequins on her dress catching the light as she raised her glass.
"And to your father,"
Marcus added,
"who left you the greatest inheritance of all, the truth of who you are."
Athena smiled, feeling her father's presence in the room, in the clothes she wore, in the person she had become. "To truth," she agreed, "and to finally coming home to ourselves." The dinner party stretched late into the evening, filled with laughter, deep conversation, and a sense of genuine community. When the last guest had departed, Athena stood in the entryway of her home, truly her home now, filled with her essence rather than memories of a life only partially lived. 6 months later, Athena decided it was time to fully incorporate her father's collection into her daily life. She carefully sorted through every piece, donating what didn't suit her style to organizations supporting transgender individuals in need while preserving the most special items. The blue sequined dress remained her talisman, but she now had favorites of her own, a crimson wrap dress that accentuated her developing curves, a soft cashmere sweater dress in camel that made her feel both comfortable and elegant, and a black cocktail dress with a subtle A-line silhouette that had become her go-to for professional events. Her career had taken a new direction as well. No longer content with her former corporate job, where memories of Orlando lingered in every interaction, Athena had started her own interior design business. Her first major project had been transforming the Victorian house, brightening the dark corners, bringing warmth and light into spaces that had once felt cold and imposing. The safe room's entrance remained, though the bookcase no longer concealed a secret. Instead, it opened into what Athena called her heritage room, a space where she displayed select items from her father's collection, his journals, and photographs of him she'd discovered tucked away in albums. It was her way of honoring his memory while acknowledging both their journeys. On particularly challenging days, Athena would sit in this room, surrounded by these tangible connections to her father, and read passages from his journals. His words provided comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in her experiences, even when the outside world felt overwhelming. "Today, I wore the blue dress for an hour, standing in front of the mirror and imagining a different life," one entry read. "In those moments, I glimpsed freedom. Perhaps someday, in another life." "It wasn't another life, Dad," Athena would whisper.
"It was this one, just continued through me."
The second anniversary of her discovery approached, and Athena planned a personal commemoration. She would wear the blue sequined dress, now a symbol of her transformation, and visit her father's grave for the first time as her authentic self. The day arrived with perfect autumn weather, clear skies and just enough crispness in the air to warrant a light wrap over her dress. Athena drove to the cemetery, a bouquet of white lilies resting on the passenger seat beside her. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel, her mind calm despite the emotional significance of the moment. The cemetery was quiet, with only a groundskeeper visible in the distance. Athena's heels clicked softly on the paved path as she made her way to her father's grave, the blue sequins of her dress catching sunlight with each step. She stood before the granite headstone, tracing her fingers over the engraved name. her father's male name, the only one the world had ever known. "Hello, Dad," she said softly, placing the lilies against the stone. "It's me, Athena."
The person you helped me discover, even though you never knew you would.
She told him about her journey over the past 2 years, about the challenges and triumphs, about the ways she'd found to honor his memory while living her own truth. She described the heritage room, the pieces of his collection she'd integrated into her wardrobe, the journal entries that had given her strength during difficult moments. "I wish we could have known each other this way," she said, wiping away a tear that threatened to fall. "Woman to woman, truth to truth, but in a way, we did. Your clothes, your words, they've been my guide, my connection to you." As she spoke, Athena felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. The blue, sequined dress, the first piece of her father's collection she'd ever worn, now symbolized not just the beginning of her journey, but its continuation. She would always be evolving, always discovering new aspects of herself, but the foundation was set. "Thank you," she whispered, touching the headstone one final time before turning to leave. "For everything you never knew you gave me." Walking back to her car, Athena felt lighter, as if the final threads connecting her to Orlando had gently released. The blue sequins on her dress caught the sunlight, creating a constellation of tiny stars that seemed to dance around her with each step, a reminder that even in moments of solemnity, there was room for beauty and joy. That evening, Athena hosted another dinner party, larger this time, including colleagues from her design business and new friends she'd made throughout her transition. Her home was filled with laughter, conversation, and a sense of genuine community. As she moved among her guests in her blue, sequined dress, offering appetizers and refilling wine glasses, Athena caught glimpses of herself in various mirrors and reflective surfaces. Each glimpse confirmed what she now knew with certainty. She had found her way home to herself. Later, after the guests had departed and the house had quieted, Athena changed into a comfortable silk nightgown, another treasure from her father's collection, and stood before the large window in her bedroom, looking out at the night sky. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, her hand touching the gold locket at her throat. "For showing me the way, even when you couldn't find it for yourself." The stars twinkled back at her, and Athena smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace. Her journey had begun with a search for tax documents, but what she'd found instead was infinitely more valuable. Her authentic self, waiting patiently to be discovered in a hidden room filled with sequins, silk, and a father's unspoken truth. In that moment, Athena knew that while her transformation had been remarkable, it was merely the beginning. The road ahead would have its challenges, but she would face them as her true self, authentic, complete, and finally at home in her own skin. The dress that had started it all, the blue sequined cocktail dress, would hang in a special place in her closet. A reminder that sometimes the most profound discoveries come not from what we're actively seeking, but from what has been waiting to be found all along.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!